Hi, welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm your host, Mark Graven. Our guest today is Andy Paige. She is an actress currently playing Pearl on ABC's General Hospital. She's a QVC guest host and a nationally recognized beauty, image, and lifestyle expert. Andy's known for her best-selling book, Style on a Shoestring, and what she calls her fabulously frugal transformations on shows like NBC's Emmy Award-winning Starting Over, TLC's 10 Years Younger, and the Style Network's How Do I Look? Andy also hosts a podcast called The Dating Lab with the Hillbilly Yenta, which explores modern dating with humor and insight. Beyond TV and radio, she's the creator of innovative products, including the GirlyGoGarter, which is seen worldwide in thousands of stores, including CVS. So, Andy, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. How are you?
I am so happy to be with you. I know that we've had a few hiccups in getting together, but I've really been looking forward to it. So thank you for the beautiful introduction and your time.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. And you have a very busy professional schedule. So I appreciate you being able to make some time to talk with us here today. There's a lot of things I want to explore and talk about, the different aspects of your career and different turns that's taken. But first things first, the key question here, Andy, what's your favorite mistake?
Well, my favorite mistake is a little alarming because what I'm about to say usually doesn't come out of very many people's mouths. So about 15 years ago, it'll be 15 years this July, I cut off my right foot. And I cut off my right foot being an adventure girl, which I always have been.
Uh-huh.
I was with my then boyfriend at a ocean club where everyone, climbed up on this huge cliff and they jumped off. And I was like, I want to go do that. And my then boyfriend was like, that's insane. That's very dangerous. I don't think it's a good idea. And I basically looked at him and called him, a few wimpy names and said, that's not how I live my life. I am not going to sit on the sidelines and watch everybody else have fun. I'm going to go do that. And I did it wrong. I stood in line. I asked everybody, how far, what do I need to do? And I did it wrong. So within a matter of not even 3 seconds, with a matter of milliseconds, my life changed dramatically. I was 5 days away from going to film the next season of my show. I was supposed to, this happened on July 4th, and I was supposed to leave on like the 10th. I had a very, big life. I was, on TV. I was a personality. I had just launched a book. There was so many amazing things that were, in my life and were a part of this trajectory, and it all just stopped very abruptly in a matter of seconds. So what that forced me to do is, the first thing it did is I got very mad at God, because I'm a big God girl and I have lived a very, clean life, if you will. I got very mad at God, and while I am in the hospital under morphine, and they have not yet put my foot back on, I am like hallucinating and just having it out with God, Mark. I mean, I'm like screaming and hollering. I screamed and hollered so much they actually called the police. So a police officer had to come to my room. But I got very quiet and I listened to God in my hallucination. And I was very clear that I needed to make some changes and I needed to pick up the mantle of the GirlyGoGarter, which was a product that I had invented within my television show. So the GirlyGoGarter is a hands-free purse that you wear on your leg. And I know you mentioned it.
Yeah.
But the GirlyGoGarter, I invented it as a mic pack holder for my leg on set. And I just got a very clear message that, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do next. It wasn't anything that I thought I was supposed to do next. I had kind of ignored it. I'd made one for myself, and that was good. But now I have brought to market the #1 insulin carriage device. It's used for people who are insulin dependent. It's used for all kinds of medical devices. We do a huge business with radio, not radio. Well, I mean, I suppose radio, but television and film and studio services. We allow security carriage for undercover police officers. So this one little idea that I was kind of ignoring, and I loved my boyfriend, but he had asked me to marry him, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So God was just like, you need to sit down and think about things all over again. So it was a huge mistake to jump off Elephant Rock, which is this huge boulder. But it forced me to make a lot of changes in my life. And now I'm happily married. I have 3 bonus children that I cherish and have learned so much from. I'm back on television, which I would have never thought, but I am. I have brought this product to life, and I'm really proud of how empathetic and understanding I am now of many more challenges and disabilities and things like that. So it made me a better person.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. It's a jolt to hear a story, a mistake with that kind of outcome, not just physical outcome, but then I can only imagine the emotional impact. And I don't mean to pry or get too medical, but did you hit the edge of the rock coming down? I mean, was there, I imagine, a pretty catastrophic injury to your foot from that?
Yes. So very interestingly enough, I jumped off this rock, and when I was growing up, I'll come back around to it, but when I was growing up, my grandparents raised me. My grandfather used to restore old cars, and he was a part of a local antique car association. He was the president, and there was a member of that association. His name was Chibi Smith. And Chibi Smith, as a young teenager, had jumped off the Chickasaw Bridge and head first, and he had experienced a spinal injury, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. And he loved my grandfather, and he loved old cars. And about twice a year, Chibi's handlers would come, and they would pull into the driveway, and they would open the back of this van, and Chibi would come, and he would sit in our backyard, and he would talk to my grandfather about cars. And my grandfather, was very kind and really just so very sweet to him. But I was always taught that you don't jump off a bridge head first, that Chibi Smith was an example of what not to do. So I just want you to imagine, I jump off this rock. I have not thought of Chibi Smith in 30 years, maybe even 40. And the first thing that I think about is Chibi Smith. So I jump off the rock. I see very clearly that I'm going to miss the water, that I'm going to hit something. So I reverse myself in air so that I can basically land and try to push off the part that I'm going to miss, because I'm going to hit it basically a platform. I'm not going to make the water.
And not hitting it head first was your goal, of course. Yeah.
And not to let it hit my tailbone. So, because I jumped off and I was kind of like leaned back, and I was like, oh. And so I reversed myself in air, and I landed, and then I pushed into the water. And so, this was not like a platform, like, a sidewalk. This was like a rock. So the rock was such that it was very jagged. And so my right foot took the entire brunt. So basically the impact broke my leg in over 300 places, and it basically just popped my foot off. I know that sounds crazy, but that's pretty much what happened.
Oh gosh. Wow.
So, but you should know, I made it to the water, and I was like, oh, I saved my life. Like, I couldn't believe I saved my life, Mark. I was like, okay, I can feel everything. So I was very excited. And then I went to kick to come back up, and I felt the drag of my foot. I felt that drag. And so I went down and lifted my foot, and I literally had my foot in my hand, but I caught it.
Oh my.
I caught it. So, and it's 15 years later. I've had over a dozen surgeries, all kinds of replacement parts and everything in my leg and my foot. But I have my foot, and I walk really, really effectively without a lot of pain, and through a lot of just miraculous medical inventions and ingenuity. So I caught my foot, I got it back on. It changed my life in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the part of the story of it kind of redirecting purpose or,
Yeah.
professional direction with the Girly Go Garter. I mean, as you were going through those initial days of recovery, did you figure at the least you were going to have a lot of time in rehab and not being able to work on camera? I mean,
Oh,
I'm sure
sure.
that
I
was
mean, I
what you
didn't
were
think I would be able
facing.
to walk again. I mean, I was basically told, it's going to be a struggle. If we get if we get the foot to take, because I mean, think about like reattaching your foot, right? There's a lot to that. So they were not mincing words with me. Like they didn't know if I was
Mhm.
going to be able to walk on it. I was, probably going to have a prosthetic.
Mhm.
They didn't know how long it was going to take. Um, so yes, I refocused immediately on the Girly Go Garter, and I'm so grateful that God gave me the idea and that I was able to figure out immediately. Okay, if this is my lot in life and this is what has happened to me, then or I did to myself, right? Then
Mhm.
my next set of goals is to not be a failure and to not let this beat me, but I obviously have got to invent this product and bring it to market.
Mhm.
So within
Yes.
10 days, I started refusing all of my pain medicine because it made me so loopy. I slept all the
Mhm.
time. And in my mind, I
Mhm.
was like, I've got things I got to get accomplished. I've got things I've got
Right.
to do. So
Right.
I was in the hospital for almost a month. And within, like I said, 10 days, I was researching. I figured out how to write a business plan. I filed for a
Mm.
provisional patent. I did all of that from my hospital bed in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
uh, yeah, I'm very grateful to have had like a new, very strong, very clear purpose that allowed
Yeah.
me to focus on something other than wallowing in this massive mistake.
Yeah.
Massive
Yeah.
mistake.
And
um, and have a new direction.
yeah, the so part of the need for the Girly Garter, and I'll encourage people go take a look at it online, and
Yeah.
you can see the product. And Andy, I know you can describe it for people who are listening, or maybe you can hold. I don't know if you've got one you can hold up here on YouTube. But I've watched enough, whether it's local news or Sports Center or Weather Channel. Feel like I'm outing myself for looking at the women's legs on TV, but you can't help but notice sometimes, to defend myself. You see what looks like a microphone pack around their calf, and it might be just some sort of like really functional black strap or something. Because it seems like there's women's. I know, like my wife in business attire, when she's had to do things on stage or on camera, not easiest, not always the same places that us guys have to clip or tuck away a microphone pack with women's clothing, right?
No, you're right. I mean, that's ultimately why I invented it. Coming from a reality television background, reality television really didn't have a lot of union rules. They weren't unionized until about a decade ago. So there would be 16 to 18 hours a day that I'd be wearing a mic pack, and inevitably they would put that on my bra strap
Mm-hmm.
because it was the easiest place. Well, as you can imagine, to change the battery, my dress comes up over my head, right? And so when
Yeah,
I started to get water blisters on my back because
yeah,
it is a
yeah.
heat. I mean, the device is hot, right? It's a transmitter.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that I asked for my leg would fall down as soon as I got hot and sweaty. It just didn't work. So I made my first one out of a workout shirt, a hot glue gun, and a cut up bra with just like eyes and
Mm.
hooks. So,
Uh-huh.
and the audio people were like, oh, that's terrific. If you can get that to work, you've got something. And so I had
Yeah.
kind of, laughed it off because I was pretty busy. But now I had this whole new focus. And so my goal in inventing it and creating it was that it carry at least 3 pounds, which it does,
Mm-hmm.
which means it'll hold at least two transmitters, because usually in television and film, you've got your microphone transmitter and you also have what's called an IFB. And an IFB is where you can listen to your producers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Yeah.
both of those transmitters are heavy. So I wanted to carry at least 3 pounds. I wanted it to be pocketed. I wanted it to have some sort of secure flap. I wanted it to be pretty. And most importantly, I needed it to work when you got hot and sweaty. So
Yeah.
yeah, we hold 19 patents.
Wow.
The hotter you are, the better it works. And we work with women size 0 all the way up to a size 28. There are 3 line extensions. We've got the GirlyGoGarter, the GlitzyGoGarter, and Under Wraps, which is our self-competing line that you can find in drugstores. So it was time well spent.
Yeah. I'm just curious, I'm fascinated from a product design, product development standpoint. How much iteration was there to try to perfect the design, or is that an ongoing, series of improvements based on use, feedback, your own? I'm sure you use it and wear it. Right?
Every day. For
Yeah.
me, it took a long time. I actually, went to China on crutches. I followed a lot of leads. I tried very hard to make the product in this country, but the gripper element, which is patented, was an impossibility here. We do a lot of elements here, so some elements of the product I have to do in China, and then it's brought here, and we do all the finishing work and the packaging and some labor here. But yeah, it took a lot from the time I really started focusing on it until our launch, and until I received my first patent was about 2 years. So it was no small thing. It took 2 years to again raise the money, and I mean I didn't. I mean in the big scheme of things, I was only able to raise around $300,000, which sounds like a lot of money until you, a small business person, are ready to launch a product on this level. Everyone said, do not launch this product without at least $1 million, and they were right. It made it extremely hard.
Yeah.
But I launched with what I had, and the iterations and all of that took a very, very long time. Very long time.
Yeah. Well, and the more money you raise, the more control you give up of the business, and you give up the financial stake. I'm just curious, because of your background in reality TV, and to honor my guest from one of the 2 guests from the very first episode of this podcast, Kevin Harrington, who was one of the sharks on season 1 of Shark Tank. Like, did you try to go on Shark Tank with this product?
Oh, I have. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, you
I've
have?
tried. Oh, definitely.
Oh, you've
I
tried.
definitely have.
Okay, you have tried. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I have tried. There have been other products similar to mine that have never really gone anywhere or done anything. But because there have been similar products, I've never made it. And the other problem is my television background. So the process of being on Shark Tank is the sharks have to have zero knowledge or zero awareness of you or your product. And almost all of the sharks, because of my television background, have a little bit of awareness of me. So they've all been like, no, we know Andy, or no, we've seen her on QVC, or, so that's been the other problem there.
You have an unfair advantage being on camera and presenting, and
So that deterred things.
Okay. Did you end up on QVC first off because of the GirlyGoGarter being there to help sell or pitch it?
No, I wish. I can't get them to sell it.
No.
I am actually a pitch person for other people. So I'm considered a guest host, which is I'm a brand ambassador. So if you've got an amazing product and you feel like you need someone to represent your company because you're not comfortable or because you think someone else could do it better, I am in a stable of qualified and certified QVC guest host who can come on and act as an expert for your product. So I'm a brand ambassador for half a dozen products on QVC. I mean, I've done 20 shows in the past 2 weeks. So I'm there helping other startups like mine, find an audience. But QVC has never given me a break. And it's so funny because everyone uses my product there. I leave the GirlyGoGarters, I bring them, the staff uses them, the hosts use them. But no, I have never been able to get my product on QVC. Maybe one day, though. I'm not giving up, Mark.
No, you seem like the type to not give up.
No, I hate the word no. Oh my gosh, it's the worst word in the world. I hate no. So I'm pretty determined person. So I haven't given up.
Yeah. So you're on QVC. That's always live. Is that right?
It is always live.
Yeah.
It is live television. It's a very interesting experience, but I relish it. I love it. And in a very small way, I really appreciate the opportunity to support a lot of these people who had great ideas just like me, and perhaps don't have the television experience or the comfort with being in front of a camera, and to be able to breathe life to their product and be an expert and an ambassador on their behalf is a real honor.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? I mean, being on live TV, we all make mistakes. I mean, is there anything on air that you thought, oh, that was an unfortunate mistake, or do you try not to worry about that possibility of making mistakes live on air?
I don't, and I'll tell you why I don't. Because I studied to be a sportscaster, and so I came up as a journalist. And in journalism, the number one goal that I was taught was that I needed to have no accent whatsoever. I needed to be as middle of the road as possible so that I could appeal to the largest audience. And what I have learned in reality television is that is not the case at all. The more really entrenched you are in your own personality, whoever you are, and the more you are yourself and not trying to be, vanilla, the more people will respond to you. And so I've made lots of mistakes on TV, and it has turned into wonderful moments for people to relate to me, to find it endearing, to understand that it happens to everybody, and I've been given so much grace. So I don't think that mistakes are a bad thing at all. I think that in many ways they are a blessing, and live TV will certainly help solidify that in your mind.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes viral blooper, or sometimes a blooper goes viral. It could be good for your name exposure or for QVC.
So mistakes don't bother me in that way, not at all.
Yeah. And it seems like you're able to show yourself grace first and foremost over mistakes, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's hard. It can be a real butt clench, but like, oh, but for the most part, I'm just like, I got to roll with it. So it's okay. I used to hate mistakes, but I've come to appreciate them, which is why I love your podcast. And I think your theme is just so fantastic.
Oh, well, thanks. And you grew up in Alabama, correct?
I did. Yeah. Talk about mistakes. Only through the lens. I said, talk about mistakes only through the lens of football. We've had a very hard University of Alabama football season.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't trying to bring that up. I mean, my school's not in the playoff either. So, but I mean, I hear a bit of a Southern twang in your voice. Do you let that loose a little bit more then? You're not trying to sound like you're from Nebraska, the way broadcasters were sort of traditionally told to sound?
Yeah, it's very interesting. In reality television, I continue to work on, keeping this very nondescript accent, if you will. And the first time I got very upset or excited on set and I kind of let my Alabama show, the producers came over to me and they were like, excuse me, we need more of that. And I was like, you do? And they were like, yeah, give us more of that. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So it was a real hard lesson, but it was a great lesson to learn. Again, the more you are yourself, because the truth of the matter is the other thing that I've learned, Mark, that has been a huge lesson for me. And I'd love for your listeners to lean in right now, because the truth is a third of the people are going to love you. A third of the people are going to hate you. And a third of the people do not give two poo-poos about you. So if you spend all your time working on the 2/3 that either don't care about you or hate you, then you are wasting your time. Just focus on the third, because a third of people, that's a lot. I mean, a third of the United States is like over 100 million people. So if you can get 100 million people to love you, then you are like winning hard.
Right.
So you just can't focus on all the ones who are like, whatever, which is the other reason why, in my podcast, the dating lab with the Hillbilly Yenta, like people are like, why do you want to call yourself a hillbilly? And I'm like, I own that stuff hard. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
hillbilly Yenta. You got it.
But yeah, no, that's a good reminder. I mean, I am barely somewhat of a public figure, having done podcasting for a long time, and like anything that you could do that people could give reviews to. So books. Not everyone thinks a book is a 5-star production, and I've tried to come to terms with that. And I don't know if you're familiar with the song Casey Musgraves. I think there was some day where I was feeling a little bad about somebody didn't like something I had produced or whatever, and it happens, but still, there's emotion. And the song came on the radio. Casey Musgraves, "Cup of Tea." Do you know the song?
I do know the song. What a beautiful song. Gosh, she's such
I
a
mean, she
talent.
basically sings, you can't be everybody's cup of
Cup of
tea. And
tea.
I needed to hear that day, and sometimes on other days.
Yeah.
You gotta,
It's
you
okay.
gotta be yourself, and that's the way to live, right?
Yeah, and if everything was good, then you'd have no perspective at all. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that feedback, but sometimes I laugh so hard at feedback. I mean, I do the same thing. I mean, I'm in, a position where I'm reviewed, if you will. But I
Mm-hmm.
do read the reviews, and sometimes I'm just like, I'm sorry, like, for the GirlyGoGarter, you'll get a review, like, someone will give you 1 star, and you go to read the review, and it's like, it showed up and the packaging was damaged. And it's like,
That's
I
not your
had
fault.
zero to do with that, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
like zero to do with that. Zero. So reviews are, I mean, I suppose it's good. And the truth is QVC was the ultimate opportunity to review, right? It was the very first opportunity for someone to explain to you why they loved it. And so I'm in the business of reviews in many ways. So I do
yeah,
respect them. But at the same time, you have to take it with a grain of salt. And many reviews are written on days where people are not at their best either. And that often happens
sure.
too. This is just an outlet
Yeah,
to take out some of their frustration. So it's okay.
yeah, yeah. And on behalf of other authors, I'll say, please, please, if Amazon was a day late in delivering your book, please do not turn that into a 1-star review of the author. Please,
Isn't that?
please, please.
I mean, I have seen that a lot.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so frustrating. But anyway, yes, you're right. That's a great message.
But I think then again, reviews like that, if someone's like, there's a 1-star review, what's that about? Oh, that was about the shipping.
Yes.
That probably doesn't
Yeah.
really hurt anything. So I want to ask you then about General Hospital. How did that come to be? There's a lot to
Well,
talk about here.
there is. This is not a mistake, Mark. Let me tell you. So this really has to do with my life in many ways. I was raised by my grandparents in a small town in Alabama. I was a big God girl. I had a lot of churching growing up, and
Mm-hmm.
I have just walked in faith with the belief that God had my back. I knew right from wrong. And if I showed up every day, my best possible self, and I tried to make things better and not worse, and did whatever kind of was asked of me in a way that, if you need me to sweep the floor, I'm going to sweep the floor, and not tell you no, and not someone who asks you to pick all the green M&Ms out of my selection. If you just are like a good person, that means something. It has value, and eventually it will pay off. And me being the latest cast member of this legacy show is a perfect example. So 20 years ago, when I was on an amazing show, Starting Over, which was an NBC show, we won Emmys. It was wonderful. I was the beauty and style expert on that show. That was a daily reality show that had 35 producers. And all of those producers went on to do amazing things. And I'm so fortunate that so many of them went on with the knowledge that I was someone who will show up and make things a little better and do my best and try my hardest, and that they could depend on me. And so
Mm-hmm.
20 years later, when the role of, a guest host on a fictional home shopping network came available, one of those producers, two of them actually, who knew through LinkedIn that I was now a guest host on QVC, reached out on a Thursday and was like, we've got this crazy role. It's a little interesting. There's this innovative, experiment in television and advertising happening, and we need a home shopping, host. Would you be interested? And I was like, of course. And so within 3 days, I was cast. So it was all about the relationships and the knowledge that I was going to do my best and try my hardest and that they could depend on me.
Had you done acting at all growing up at any point, yet alone on TV?
No, I mean, I took an acting class in college. But no, I've never, and of course I have broadcast experience, but saying words that other people have written for you is very different than being yourself on TV, I can assure you.
Sure.
But I mean, it was an arena, meaning the Home Shopping Network arena, that I was very comfortable with. And so there was very few words that they could put together that I probably haven't, formulated myself. So I felt comfortable in that. But, I do play this role next to Morgan Fairchild, Mark.
Oh.
Yeah, right? I mean, I watched her as a kid on Falcon Crest. She was just the Southern beauty and then she was Chandler's mom on Friends, and she's just had all these iconic roles. So I am thrilled to be a part of the show and to have her as a guest host. But really, this experiment that I'm engaged in is also pretty fascinating because we're all watching television in a new and different way. And many of us are trying to avoid ads, and we're streaming. And that's great, but ads are what pay for television,
Right.
So General Hospital and ABC had the idea of turning one of their storylines into a real-life experiments and consumable experience for their fans. So Deception Beauty has been a part of General Hospital for decades now, and it's this cosmetic company where fans have been able to watch a lot of cosmetic products and cosmetic tools and technology come to life within the storyline. And so they decided to make Deception Beauty real. And the way that they're bringing it to the fans is once a product has been licensed in real life, they bring it to Home and Heart or Shop Home and Heart. And Morgan and I basically pitch it within the show. And then you can go to shophomeandheart.com to buy those products. So it is an experiment that I do think is going to change the way that we watch television in many ways.
Wow. So that sounds like, it's a deeply integrated product placement.
Deeply.
Seems, right?
Yeah. And, I had already named 2 shows that are starting next year, and they're starting out with it completely set up. So when you're watching these new shows that come out, every single thing within the set is going to be consumable. From the sheets where your favorite characters are, getting their scrunky on, to the clocks on the wall and the hair products and, everything, the handbag that, your favorite character is using. It's all going to be linked in tandem with a website so that the show is 100% consumable.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And for the sake of the transcription, how do you spell scrunky?
Scrunky. SKRUNK.
Okay. I think the AI translation will come up with something, and now that you've spelled it, hopefully.
I don't know why I feel like it should be a K and not a C, but I'm thinking it's a K. So there you go.
I think that sounds right. Not a mistake. So that is really coming full circle. The soap in soap opera was the sponsor pitch at the beginning of soap operas, even when they were back on radio, I believe. Yeah,
exactly. And so now people don't want to watch, a dozen ads during a show, which I understand, which is why they stream it now.
Yeah.
And, General Hospital has been on air for 61 years. 61 years. It's the longest running show in television history.
Wow.
But the majority of people, 3 million a day, are streaming it now. They're not watching it on network. So they are paying to avoid the ads. But for the show to, go on into perpetuity, you have to know that there are hundreds of people behind the scenes that are required in creating 250 hours of scripted television a year. So this is just one more level of support for the show and one more level of ways to connect with the fans and for them to, enjoy being a part of the show in a new and different way.
Yeah. Now, I don't know much about General Hospital, but to date myself as a child of the 80s, Luke and Laura was the biggest kind of cultural thing outside of Who Shot JR in that era, right?
Most definitely. I mean, to this day, like I do General Hospital fan events, and to this day, it's still the thing that everybody, can relate to. People designed their college schedules around it. It was the age of the VCR. Luke and Laura actually they were responsible for the purchase of millions of VCRs.
Yeah.
So that was a cultural phenomenon, as you said, that is still exists today. I mean, people still talk about it and think about it, and yeah. And I mean, I think about my prom dress was, very much based on her wedding dress. I mean, it had huge reaching effects, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I just the other day I was hearing I think of him as the musician Rick Springfield on the Sirius XM 80s channel. He was on General Hospital for a while in his heartthrob days, right?
Yeah. And so was, Liz Taylor was on General Hospital. Wow. I mean, wow. You think about there are the amount of people that have come out of this show are it's unbelievable. But yes, Rick Springfield was one of them. There's a lot of people who have gone on to launch incredible careers.
Yeah, that's quite a legacy, and you're part of that now. One other thing I wanted to ask, and again, our guest is Andy Paige. Andy, with soap operas, that's not live, but my understanding is that there's a lot of time pressure. You've got to get that episode out. Is it fair to say there's not a lot of time for retakes? You pretty much got to just get it right or go with it?
Mark, it is unbelievable. I mean, I mentioned that they filmed 250 hours of television per year. So my very first day, I was in scene 47 and 49 of 56 scenes that day. And just to give you a little perspective, if a movie can do 5 scenes a day, they are thrilled. If they can complete 5 scenes a day. So they're doing 10 times the amount of scenes in a day. They film in 2 blocks from 5 a.m. to noon, and then from 1 p.m. to 8 every single day. There are dozens of people in wardrobe, dozens of people in hair and makeup. There are dozens of writers, and the amount of dialogue that they get through is unbelievable. And the time pressure is so incredible that you are given 1 recorded practice and 1 recorded take. And they really want to make sure that you know what you're doing and that you get that done and that you move through it swiftly. Just recently, I did have to do the dreaded 3rd take, and I'm very grateful that Miss Morgan Fairchild came to my defense, and she was like, I wouldn't mind doing that again myself. And I was like, oh, thank you, be Jesus. I know, very sweet of her. But the time pressure is amazing. It's actually a wonderful environment to learn from, because it's kind of like one of those old adages that if you can do it here, you can do it anywhere, and it's kind of true.
And I bet with your background, being on live TV, I imagine there's certain actors whose abilities just fit better with that if they've been on stage or other environments where they haven't gotten used to being able to do so many different takes as they might do in a film.
Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, being live certainly does. I don't mind the pressure of being live, because for me, the pressure of being live just means that you need to be 1,000% prepared, which I naturally am. Like I'm that girl that I overpack, I overthink, because being unprepared is so frightening to me. So I tend to be overprepared so that even if I mess up, it doesn't look so bad. It just means I didn't get it as perfect as I wanted it to be. But yes, there are certain personalities and that do lend itself to this kind of environment. But let me just tell you, you wouldn't be hired unless you could do it, because there's no room for error. They've got a lot to get through. And, a few extra takes here, a few extra takes there means you don't leave till 9 or 10 o'clock at night and not 8 o'clock. So that's a big deal.
Yeah. Does that show, I mean, how far in advance are the episodes completed? I imagine they're not exactly day to day of when they're going to air. There's a little bit of lead time.
Yeah, they run about 3 weeks, weeks out. Yeah. So I just had an episode. Yeah, it's pressure. I just had an episode air in December the 6th. So that was like Friday. or just like a couple of days ago. And then I filmed that in October. So that was actually a bit of a bigger lag.
Okay. Well, Andy, maybe one last question for you, because I know you had some thoughts to share on this. As a mother, what are your thoughts about helping your kids learn from mistakes?
I don't want them to be afraid to make mistakes. And I don't want them to be afraid to figure it out for themselves. Mistakes are just the absolute best way to learn anything. You can have someone tell you a million times. I mean, my husband told me not to jump off that rock, and I laughed in his face. But until you experience it for yourself and you learn from that, you truly haven't learned the lesson. So I encourage my kids to be, courageous and to take risks and to be curious and to be open and to constantly, want to be a part of things and not to be, a wall sitter. You want to be involved in life. And if you make a mistake, it's totally fine. It will be okay. And for every mistake I've made in business, and I've made like $10,000 mistakes, I've, looked at the universe and looked myself in the mirror and said, I'm so glad that was a $10,000 mistake and not a $100,000 mistake. So thank you, universe, for teaching me that lesson for 10 G's and not 100 G's. So you just have to be grateful for their mistakes and not be afraid to take chances.
Yeah. Well, Andy, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, first off, a very personal story about the cliff and your foot. And thank you for sharing. I mean, so much. We could have done a whole 40 minutes talking about the evolution of GirlyGoGarter. So, but thank you for sharing, so many perspectives and themes from so many aspects of your work and your life. It's really, really interesting, really inspiring. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having this incredible podcast and for doing this deep dive in such an amazing work. I mean, I listen to your podcast. What you do is incredible. There's nothing really that I've said that hasn't been said on your show. There's nothing that I'm saying that you haven't written about or thought of and expressed, but it's really wonderful that you take the time to, make sure that people hear it in new ways so that somebody new that needs to hear it is actually doing that. So I applaud you as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Andy. So again, Andy Paige, there'll be links in the show notes where you can learn more about her and her products. And if you haven't already seen her on TV, fire up the, we'd say now the DVR, or fire up the YouTube TV instead of the VCR. And you can watch everything that Andy continues to do. So this has been great. Thank you again for being a guest.
It's my pleasure.